Hi, my name's Tony Morrow, and this is Introduction to Project Management. Have you ever played a game of broken telephone and you laughed at the final message being absolutely nothing like what was initially said? Well, communications in a project works much the same way. Ensuring that the right information is sent at the right time and that the right people receive it properly is key. Project communications management involves the processes required to ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, and distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, and monitoring, and ultimate disposition of project information. Yeah, there's a lot there. So let's divide that into two parts. The first is developing a strategy to keep communication clear and effective for stakeholders. The second is executing activities to implement the strategy. Since we are in the planning process group, we will focus on the strategy for today. Communications come in various formats or mediums between people and in a project. Written communication in either physical, hard, or electronic, soft formats is a go-to method that many organizations rely on. Verbal or spoken communication, previously face-to-face but now via video, is critical to effective communication. Both of these can be formal or informal in nature. This often governs the choice of words and the body language used, or at least to be mindful of in communicating. As a project manager, most of your time communicating is with your team members or stakeholders, both internal and external. When developing our strategy, how much of our communication will be internal versus external, formal versus informal, official versus unofficial, or written versus verbal? Will there be a hierarchical focus of any of it, upward to senior management or stakeholders, downward to the team and others who work on the project, or horizontal to other project managers or peers? In the end, it's communications management that will help us develop the relationship we need to be successful in our project. It will help us avoid misunderstandings and miscommunication by clearly laying out the methods, mediums, and messages we'll use to transmit and receive our communications. The 5 C's help us in keeping our messages understood. They are: be correct. Be correct with your grammar, spelling, and terminology. Doing this the right way allows you to be precise, specific, and enhance your professional credibility. Be concise. Be brief and avoid extra words. Well-crafted messages get to the point, reducing the chance of distortion and misunderstanding. Be clear. Be clear in expression and purpose, directed to the needs of your receiver. How do the interests and needs of the audience relate to your message? We need to make a connection between the message and why it's important to the audience. Be coherent. Be coherent as in to have a logical flow of ideas. Structure your ideas using key markers like an introduction and summaries to allow your audience to follow and understand the message. Controlling the flow, as in controlling the flow of words and ideas. Use graphics, text boxes, flowcharts, and more to connect ideas and enhance the other 4 of the 5 C's. Every project is unique, so tailoring your plan is important. Think about your stakeholders. Are they internal, external, or both? Are you dealing with clients? Are their concerns, interests, or frustrations being addressed? Are they being kept informed by direct or indirect communications? Is your team discussing the project and sharing the information? Are your managers being kept informed, and are they informing you? Is your team co-located or virtual? Are you in the same time zone? If not, how are you spread out? What kinds of communications technology are you using? Zoom, MS Teams, teleconferencing, something else? Are you able to record, track, transmit, and retrieve your communications and documents? What language is being used for communication? More than one? Have allowances been made to adjust for the complexity of team members and stakeholders from diverse language groups? Are you communicating with clients in an official language, or are you using a non-official language? There are a lot of elements to consider. Projects that deal with a high degree of change or uncertainty need emerging information quickly. Streamlining access to that information and being as transparent as possible with frequent check-ins and stakeholder reviews will help promote better communication. That is a lot to consider, and it may not all apply to your project, but it may. Let's begin the creation of our communications plan. Planning communications management is the process of developing an appropriate plan for project communication. Activities based on the information needs of each stakeholder or group, available organizational assets, and the needs of the project. In order to plan this out, we will need some inputs or references. We'll need our project charter, our resource management plan, which we just completed, stakeholder management plan. Now, we've identified our stakeholders, but the specific stakeholder management plan is something we'll develop at the end of the process group. So we'll have to revisit this later. We will also need our requirements documentation, which we developed during scope, and our stakeholder registry. Oh, and of course, we can't forget our best buds, Fs and OPAs. With these references in hand, we will apply our expert judgment, which may include expertise on understanding the political power and cultural dynamics of the organization, change management approaches, communications technology, so carrier pigeons versus text messaging and video chat, organizational procedures for corporate communications, and security. Using our experts, we will conduct a communications requirement analysis, an assessment of the information needs of the stakeholders and the type, format, and value of that information. Considerations can include legal requirements, classification of information, secret, protected B, etc. External and internal information needs, the number of people and resources involved, different departments, organizations, or specialties, number of communication paths, one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many. Our communications analysis can inform or be informed by our communications technology. What technology is available? What's its ease of use? Compare iOS to something like DOS for those of us from the 80s and 90s. What is the project environment? Are you operating in different time zones? Are you virtual, etc.? And what's the security of information? Is it confidential? Is there protected or proprietary information? And how are you dealing with things like social media for team members? Are you applying the appropriate security? By example, in Latvia, Canadian troops had their social media monitored by Russian forces, and they were able to map the perimeter of NATO bases purely by tracking the fitness data and the routes of their runs, because Canadian soldiers would typically run the perimeter of the base every day. What kind of communications model is the project going to use? As an example, a simple model is an encode, transmit, decode model. I write an email in English, encoding it in the language used. Then I transmit it via email or the medium, and the message is received and decoded by a person who can read English. The encode and decode process can have many influencing factors: the emotional state of the reader or sender, nationality, profession, gender, culture, unconscious bias, and many more. Are acronyms or technical terms being used? Does everyone understand those terms? And of course, as I mentioned, language. Are communications transmitted in both official languages or just one? Transmission and receipt of a message is important. Have you sent texts, emails, or left a phone message expecting a response only to find out that the message was never received, read, or listened to? Using positive feedback methods that acknowledge the receipt or require a conscious active feedback mechanism from the sender help with this. In maritime and aerospace communications, there is a procedure in place to do just this and to prevent miscommunication. It clearly indicates the start and end of communications and acknowledges receipt. It is a specific safety procedure to ensure effective communication and prevent miscommunication. Your iPhone and Messenger apps have a similar functionality that can indicate to you if a message has been received or read. However, this does not ensure that the reader understood your message. Lastly, what kind of communication methods are you planning to use? Interactive, push, or pull? Interactive communications involve two or more parties performing multi-dimensional, two-way, three-way, or four-way communications in real time. Video conferencing, MS Teams, Zoom calls, and social media are great examples of this. Push communications are distributed or sent to recipients who need the information. This ensures that the info is sent, but not necessarily received or understood by the intended audience. Memos, letters, email, voicemail, blogs, and press releases are a good example of this. Pull communications allow recipients to access content at their own discretion. Video on demand, e-learning, various kinds of websites, and even this video is an example of pull communication. Different methods can be applied in different circumstances and should be. Mass communication is different from interpersonal communication, which is different in small groups or in public communication. What works best for your plan as a combination of your communication requirements and analysis depends on the communications technology available and the communications model and methods that you want to use. It will depend on your project. Having a meeting to discuss and brainstorm what works best, and of course review any data or historical information on similar projects, will set you up for success. Once you've created your plan, you should have some of the following mapped out. Stakeholder communication requirements, information to be communicated, including language, format, content, and level of detail. Escalation process, distribution lists with why or intent of information, time frame, schedule, or tempo of communication, persons responsible for communicating, the authority for release of information, methods or technologies used, resources allocated for communications, how many carrier pigeons will I need, method for updating or refining the communications management plan as the project evolves and different phases are reached, flow charts, organizational charts, reporting chains, workflows, meeting plans, etc., constraints from policies or technology or regulation, and a list of references or glossary of terminology. With this plan developed, you may need to update your project schedule by adding communication activities and your stakeholder register to include any updates or planned communications. In today's episode, we've defined and discussed project communications management, the 5 C's of communication, planning communications management, communication requirement analysis, communication models, encode, transmit, decode, acknowledging and feedback responses, communication methods, interactive, push, pull, and we've created our communications management plan. In the next episode, we'll discuss risk.